Me, I want what's coming to me.
Oh, well, what's coming to you, Tony?
The world, Chico. And everything in it.
Where's the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country, and his ambassador, his army? I'm protected by the ancestors. Voodoo runs in my bloodline. Don't tell me nothing about the damn devil. Yeah, cool, got you fearing you. No religion, but I'm spiritual. The man used it as propaganda to divide us all. I'm just giving truth. The earth in fear with the black man. The earth in love with the black man. Even down to fashion. They take the culture, then cash in. What you know about Gary Morgan? What you know about Richard Spikes? Your luxury car wouldn't have a shift. Your intersection wouldn't have a light. All praise to the black woman. See, without her, you wouldn't have a life. Have respect. Find yourself disrespecting her, then we at your neck. You don't want us in America, then return back what we did for her. You would have nothing on this blood soil. You all spoiled. Matter of fact, we would say before you. Your history books full of falsehood. You can't educate us. We know you dropped crack in the hood to blow our families up. It didn't detonate us. If you can see it, didn't separate us. All it really did was elevate us. You can't kill the original people of the earth. Is you fucking crazy? I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power. I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power. I'm Nat Turner with the smoking gun. Change the cone when the sermon stop. The pastor telling me to keep praying. Life telling me to buy a Glock. The news tells us it's our fault. When we shot down by the cops, we're witnessing a modern day lynching. No ropes when they tie the knot. Look at you trying to buy a watch. Look at them from the buy your block, then put you out. Starbucks on your corner, that's how they push you out. Then raise the price. Grandma lived there for years, every day of life. Now she forced to undersell. The system built for you to stay confined. I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power. I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power.
Woo! I love that song. I'm telling you. Let me drop the link. Family, to that song. I go off. Shout out to brother Jaylon Musa. And we know, he had Mansa Musa, all right? And so shout out to Jaylon Musa. I'm going to drop the link to his music, family, in the chat. Peace and power to everyone under the sound of my voice. And I'm going to start posting the intro songs, the links to the songs under the description. Someone had made that request, and I told them as soon as I get to them, I will definitely post the link to these brothers' music. But I always post the link at the beginning, so you can always grab it when you watch, the rewind of the live chat. But peace and love to everyone under the sound of my voice. I want to give y'all the proper greeting. He said, ahuru, sasa. Freedom now, family. That was the voice of Peace Be Upon His Soul, Geronimo Pratt. All right. I love what he says. Ahuru, sasa. So freedom now, family. So peace and love to everyone under the sound of my voice. I see that my audience family is in the building. Peace to brother Rob. Brother Rob was the first one who came in. So peace and blessings to you, brother Rob Morrow. I always butcher names. So peace and love to you. I see Iso. Peace and love to you, Iso, my brother from the Togo. Peace and love to you. I see Danielle Scott is in the building. All right. The Maadian family is definitely in the building. Danielle Scott said, thanks for putting me on, Dr. Maat. No problem, brother. The Queen Mother, Virgo Venom, is in the building. She says, be one family. Love you, Dr. Maat. Peace to the chat. Be one to you, and much love to you, Queen Mother, Virgo Venom. I see the goddess Yemaya is in the building, family. She said, peace and black power, Dr. Maat and family. Liked and shared. Family, like this video. Like the video. Let's get these views up. You know how it is with the YouTube algorithm. The more we engage with it, the more it populates, right? The more it pops up, it shows up in the YouTube search engine or on people's feed. So make sure that you thumb up the video. And also, if you're on Twitter, tweet the link out. If you're on Facebook, post the link, right? If you're on any other platforms, I don't know, there's so many of them, right? TikTok, fan base, it's so many, right? It's so many. So make sure you get the word out that Dr. Maat, that your sister is live, that your sister is live. And I have with me in the building Dr. Tyrene Wright. Dr. Tyrene Wright is going to help me unpack this topic called the internal contradictions of the Black liberation movement. The internal contradictions. And we're going to talk about transformations as well, family, all right? But the internal contradictions of the Black liberation movement. And you know who Dr. Tyrene Wright is, family. You remember, this is the author. She is the author of Booker T. Washington in Africa, The Making of a Pan-Africanist, a masterpiece that we had the honor, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Read Book Club. We had the honor of reading and discussing her book probably for about 2 months, maybe 2.5 months, something like that. And I'm telling you, she made me a believer, because I threw Booker T. Washington away. Outside of Tuskegee Institute, I knew very little about Booker T. Washington, and I never put him, in the pantheon, right, of Pan-Africanness. You would never hear me mention the Honorable Marcus Garvey and in the same breath mention Dr. or Booker T. Washington. And let me say something. I learned from Dr. Wright that Marcus Garvey considered Booker T. Washington his ideological father. So family, I'm telling you, I learned a great deal about Booker T. Washington, and his achievement wasn't just, and I don't want to say, when I say just, I'm not minimizing it. He did more than the Tuskegee Institute. She talked about the African exclusion measure. And if it wasn't for him in the Tuskegee engine that defeated the African exclusion measure, a lot of Black immigrants during that time period would not have been able to come into the United States. So there wouldn't have been a Marcus Garvey in the United States had it not been for the great Booker T. Washington. So family, make sure that you grab this book. Go to Booker T. Washington in Africa.com. Grab this book ASAP. She's running out of copies, and she's not re-ing up on this particular edition. She has a new edition coming out, another one coming out, but you don't want that way. Not saying that you don't want it, because I'm getting both of them, but you want to get this one. You want to get both, but you want to get this one so that you have a solid foundation. So when the next one comes out, you already kind of have a solid, you have a good understanding of the content. Make sense? So make sure you grab this book, family, ASAP. Booker T. Washington in Africa.com. Make sure that you grab it. Again, thumb up the video. Let's get the views up tonight, family. We are talking about the internal contradictions of the Black liberation movement. This is a conversation, family, that a lot of people don't want to have, because now this is about some introspection, right? Now this is about self-examination, right? Because a lot of times we throw daggers at the white man did do a lot of things to us. But have you heard the phrase, we've become our own worst enemy, or we can be at times our own worst enemy? And so we can. There's a lot of contradictions that lie within the Black liberation movement. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my sister, my comrade, my colleague, Dr. Tyrene Wright. Peace and love to you, Dr. Wright. How you doing?
Peace, Dr. Maat. How are you? Thank you for inviting me, as usual.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with my listeners and I tonight. I was bragging about your book. I said, you made me a believer, honey.
Thank you.
You also, and I meant to say this when I was talking about the book, you also helped me understand why we have the perception of Booker T. Washington. Like, who was responsible for creating the current perception that we have of Booker T. Washington? And it was actually a European guy, who,
Lewis
like you said,
Harlan.
what was his name? Lewis
Harlan.
Lewis Harlan, who was kind of like the gatekeeper of Booker T. Washington's legacy, and so he was largely responsible for how we view Booker T. Washington. And as I shared with you on previous discussions, a lot of us who aren't as researched as you are, I'm talking about with regards to Booker T. Washington.
Mhm.
We just kind of was like, oh, he's, we kind of, oh, he's Okatan, he's an accommodationist, and we
Right.
called him all kinds of nasty,
Right.
names, and he wasn't really for us. He was an accommodationist. He was, pacifying white folks, and he was taking them white folks' money, and so it was all of that type of stuff. And then you had the beef going on between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, and so you gave a lot of context to that situation. And so this book was packed with so much information, Doc.
Thank
And
you.
so I'm telling family, get this book. And it's not one of
This is
those.
the people's version,
Yeah,
though.
this is the
This is
people.
the
All right, this is
original people's version. The other one
yes,
coming is more academic, but this one belongs to
the people.
the people. It's in the
I
people's
say.
language,
And
right?
one thing I love about it, Doc, is it's not intimidating. Like if you look
Right.
at it, you didn't make it a 400-page book, which you could have, right? Like you could
Yeah,
have
I
made it,
could
you
have,
could have
right.
made it a 400, 500-page book, but the book is 140 pages, if that, 140. And I think that's a really good read, and a
Yeah,
really, really good read. And it's
yeah.
not too short, not too long. It's just right. And so, yeah, family, make sure that you go to Booker T. Washington in Africa.com. I will type the link. I'll put the link in the chat to her website, so you can just click on it during this discussion. Grab the book, family. I'm trying to sell her out. The Read Book Club, we sold her
Right.
out. We sold her out initially. She was
Yes,
calling. She had
yes.
back orders. She was like,
Last summer,
Dr. Bot,
yeah.
wait a minute. So we were like, ho. We telling everybody, wait a minute. We sold her out, family. And so
Right.
I want to sell her out again. And I really enjoyed, that we were able to do that, family. So make sure
Thank you.
that you grab the book. So anyway, Doc,
Yeah.
tonight's topic, contradictions of the Black liberation movement. And I just want to share with the audience the motivation, behind this topic. And so you appeared on a platform. I'm not going to mention the platform,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you appeared on a platform where, you all were talking about some things, and you started talking about how, and I'm just paraphrasing you, I'm not quoting you exactly, but you were talking about how, as Black women, right? We operate with two marginalized identities, right? We're Black, and then we're also women. And when I was listening to you, you made a lot of great points.
Mhm.
And during that discussion on that particular platform, I noticed that no one wanted to hear that. It was kind of like, I hear you, what you're talking about. And you were like, no, just trying to talk, you weren't demeaning anybody, or you were just saying, hey, as Black women, you were highlighting our struggles, right? Struggles that are specific to Black women. And
Mhm.
it was kind of like, I don't know if it went over people's heads, or if
Oh,
it
it
was
did.
just, yeah, it was, so it was
Well,
that.
that conversation is for an audience who knows our history.
Right. Yeah.
I have to be honest. I mean, an audience and a person who people who know our history, and we don't have to like teach you the history and then get into the particulars. Do you get what I'm saying? You need to have
Absolutely.
some historical context for this conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that I think that's it. But let me just say this. Let me plug Hoppy, the film and the movement, because
Yes.
we had a conversation after that. Myself, um, oh my goodness,
Dr. Ken.
Julian Malvo,
Okay. Okay.
the sister Felicia Harden from Hoppy, and ooh, another sister whose name, she's an elder who escapes my mind at the moment. She'll come to me, but longtime artist, activist in the community, Camille Yarborough.
Okay.
And she, who is, I think Camille Yarborough, she is our esteemed elder, I'm sure 80 plus years old, seen a lot, been around in the struggle, understands a lot. And it's so funny because that conversation was in total contrast to the conversation you were talking about on a different platform, because the people in the conversation were different. They were more experienced, right? They could understand, you know, a little bit more outside of the literary account, even though I brought some literature for people who want to delve into the context of our struggle in terms of the women and the view of our
Yes.
struggle, the freedom
Yes.
struggle from the women's view, right? But I think it has to do with, the people involved in that conversation were not just spectators of our struggle, but also participants. When you have a sister in the conversation, 80 plus years old, still doing it, it's still an activist, still an artist who is an activist, like Camille Yarborough, and then, other people who are in other spaces like Julianne Malveaux, and then, of course, Sister Felicia Harden, who's been working with Hoppy and that whole movement. The conversation is going to be different.
Absolutely.
Because of their proximity to the work.
Come on.
Right?
Absolutely.
They're in there, they're moving around, they're in those spaces where folks are doing work, and we are having the human politics take place in real time. Like, we got to work with together in order to get these things done. Right?
Absolutely.
And in order for, they did a big pilgrimage to Egypt, to Kemet, in May of 2022, right? You got to work with our people. And when you work with our people, you come to know our issues and our internal contradictions. So when, you have people like that in a conversation, you're going to have very different dialogue.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And so let's jump into these internal contradiction. And there was an example that I had brought to your attention when you and I kind of was just dialoguing, and that was the example of Anna Mary Douglass, the wife of Frederick Douglass. And so, and I know Dr. Umar Johnson always talks about, Frederick Douglass, and he was saying that he didn't come from his loins, but he's connected through the family. I think he said he comes from the loin of one of his cousins. And so he's always, talking about, he holds, Frederick Douglass in very, very high regard, as we all should. As we all should. And he talked about, and matter of fact, he was on Roland Martin's platform maybe like a few years back. And they kind of was going back and forth. And, because, Roland Martin challenged his ideas on interracial marriages. And Roland pointed out, he said, well, one of your ancestors, Frederick Douglass, was married to a white woman. And, and Omar Johnson said, yeah, he said, and he has to be criticized for that. And he said, but let me make this clear. He said he did not marry that woman until after his wife of 20 plus years, Annie Mary Douglass, was deceased. And that's what, the information that Dr. Umar Johnson put out there. But I want to give my audience and the people who will be watching this in the archives another version of the story, right? So Annie Mary Douglass, yes, she was married to the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass. Okay, she was married to him for 20 plus years. And a matter of fact, she was very instrumental in him securing his freedom. If you read the book, The Narrative of a Slave, his autobiography, he'll tell you the first time that he tried to escape, he got caught, right? And so then you got to ask yourself, well, what happened the second time? And, what aided in that? What aided in you accomplishing your freedom? And his wife, Annie Mary Douglass, was a huge part of him achieving his freedom. We got to remember, she was born free. She wasn't, an enslaved woman. She was born free. She worked and she used her money and resources or whatever to help him achieve his freedom as well. That's one. Frederick Douglass also was a huge advocate of education, of literacy, knowing how to read. He said, if you know how to read, you can be free, right? So he was a huge proponent of that. But his wife of 20 plus years did not know how to read. He never taught her to read. So he went out here and he advocated. And family, let me be clear. This is not Dr. Maat disparaging the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, because I know it's going to be some folks in the chat and watching. Why are you talking about this? Because we're focusing on the internal contradictions of the Black liberation movement. And until we address these contradictions, we won't be able to move forward. I'm talking about move forward in a robust way. And so let me get back to my point. And so he knew how to read, but he did not teach Annie Mary Douglass how to read. And also she worked in a factory to support his newspaper, the North Star.
Mhm.
He would send his clothes from Great Britain, and she was a wonderful wife from what we hear. But he would send his clothes to her from Great Britain, and she would wash his clothes and mail his clothes back to him.
Wow.
Now, Dr. Umar Johnson says that he married a white woman after Anna Mary Douglass died, but that was his mistress. So
Wow.
Anna Mary Douglass uh, became sick with rheumatoid arthritis, and it got to a point where she could not move. And
Mm.
during that time period, he actually moved his mistress in, and then when she died, that is when he married his white mistress. And
Mm.
so I see a lot of contradictions, Dr. Wright, just in naming this particular, just if we just look at this situation, I see the
Mhm.
contradicting in him knowing how to read, but not teaching to his wife.
Right.
The contradiction of knowing who, because you gave me a lot of quotes earlier about Frederick Douglass, knowing exactly who our open enemy is, and then turning around and marrying someone from that particular group. That's a huge contradiction in and of itself, Dr.
Yes,
Wright.
it is.
So what were your thoughts when I kind of laid out the facts concerning, Anna Mary Douglass? And if you visit his house in Baltimore, down in the Fells Point area,
Mhm.
they like erased her. They say that she was a great housekeeper or something like that, but they credit the preservation of his legacy to his white mistress. But what are your thoughts, Dr. Wright,
Really?
about everything that I just presented?
Well, of course, first of all, you're educating me, right? And I'm totally open to the education. I'm 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 not surprised because I did know that he married um a white woman, white American woman, after his wife of X number of years died. I did not know. So if anybody has written has read his book called the what is it? The autobiography of Frederick Douglass, right? Or is
The
it
narrative of a slave,
the
narrative of a
narrative?
slave.
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
So well written narrative, and if you know how he learned to read, that's interesting that he did not teach her, right?
Mm,
Because he learns to read through trickery, right? He learns to read by tricking some local white children
right,
into teaching him the letters,
right.
and from there he takes it on and on and on. So he actually, sort of, he's very smart, but he engages in trickery, sort of, in order to learn to read. And the fact that he did such a thing, and I'm not putting it, that's not a negative. The fact that he had that level of a passion and he understand what learning to read meant for us at that time. That's interesting that he did not, and it actually makes me think, to a large extent, something a friend of mine said to me. A friend of mine said, and I won't, say who it was, but I'll just say a friend of mine said, a man said to me, when he was in between marriages, someone, a wealthy white man, said to him, well, you don't need a smart woman. You never need your woman to be too smart. And you definitely don't want her to be smarter than you. So I could see how if someone has that thinking, he's not going to enhance her, intellectual ability. So I was surprised to hear, not surprised, but I was surprised to hear that was so specific, that a man who spent his life telling his story, written story, one of the few ancestors who had an autobiography that was the living proof, right? He talks about he was stolen property, these hands, this head, this, body. And this is all through narrative that he does that. So the fact that he did not share his knowledge with his wife is quite interesting. And yes, it is a statement, I think, to a large extent,
Mm,
about his position on women, because we can have a position on, um, the struggle, and then be very surprised to find out that those same individuals have a very different position on women
mm, hmm
within our
Now,
group.
No doubt, Doc. And then another person, another example I would like to bring up is Dr. King, because on previous interviews with you,
Yeah,
you mentioned his contradictions, but then also his transformation,
right.
and his contradictions and his transformation. And I remember you were saying that, at one point, he didn't want to work with women. And
Mhm.
I was initially shocked, because I remember like looking at, footage of the civil rights movement. And at one point, Dr. King was quoted, he was talking about how there were more women in the civil rights marches than men. And he was like, if only I had more women who had the hearts of men, I could really do something. So so when you said that, I was like, wait a minute, that's not Dr. Like, no, what do you mean? So I know you said at one point, he didn't want to work with women, but then something happened and he began to open up, to the idea of working with women. And so could you tell us about that?
Yeah,
Him, yeah. But you know what? One thing I can say is I was shocked when I heard it, but then I wasn't shocked because he subscribes to the Christian ideology, and I'm sure he was born from that whole, a
yeah.
woman should be seen and not heard type of thing. And so he
Right,
had that. So anyway, but please
right.
talk to us about, him
So,
not one. Yeah.
so long ago. Now, the interesting thing is, when I was an undergraduate, I took a course at Tuskegee called Malcolm and Martin, and one of the texts for that course, and the course was taught by, I think he's a president of the university now, but Dr. Edward Wheeler. We all loved him so much, and he was the dean of the chapel at Tuskegee, and he taught the course on Malcolm and Martin, and he was a graduate of Morehouse College himself, and sort of had some inside understanding of the goings on at Morehouse and all of that. That being said, Cone references the very difference, the critical difference between Malcolm and Martin with regard to their position on women, and notably Malcolm's um, willingness to work with figures like, it's hard to say historical figures because I actually met this woman, Maya Angelou, at Tuskegee.
Mm-hmm.
But she is an ancestor now. But he was readily available and willing and eager to work with Maya Angelou. And she did work with him. They would go to Ghana together and be in Ghana together. And Maya Angelou, I'm going to share with you the book where she talks about her interaction with Malcolm in Ghana, the work they were doing to develop the Organization of African Unity, okay, and the Organization of African American Unity. So Cone cites the fact that King, in stark contrast to Malcolm, was not willing to work with Maya Angelou, and actually had um, informed her that he was not willing to work with her, and that he, in general, would not have any woman visibly in leadership. In other words, when you see him marching, he has his wife, but that big six, he refused to have any woman visibly in his leadership. And that was a very clear position on the part of King. Most accounts will give you that he was like, I'm not going to be, standing in visible leadership with women. Now, the irony of that is the fact that everything King did was undergirded by one woman in particular, and who is written out of history.
Come
And
on.
that is Ella Baker.
Talk about it, Dr.
Ella
Wright.
Baker is a unbelievable force to be reckoned with. Okay, she is the movement that we know as the civil rights movement. Those young people who submitted or allowed themselves to absorb violence and respond non-violently, they were trained by Ella Baker.
Mm.
She was always a national organizer, always. So when King is coming into a city, She has already been there, recruited, trained the masses. You will see absorb the waves of violence perpetuated in that city. It's amazing that people don't know that he was the face of the civil rights movement, but she was the movement. King was not a national organizer. Okay. He was not even a local organizer. It was Ella Baker. And for any of you who know about Ella Baker, so I think that, let me see. I think because I always want to give folks some reading, especially since, our folks, we don't really, we're very sensitive, and I get it. I know that from which we come.
That's real.
So we're sensitive. We're sensitive. You understand? But this is an inside conversation to a large extent, and it's a conversation that we have to have.
Come on.
Primarily because, one of the things I learned as somebody who came through an organization, a political organization, is that we would end every program with critiquing the program, and we would look at contradictions in the program, and then we all would engage in criticism of the program, and then self-criticism, individual criticism of ourselves. Did I come late? Could I have showed up on time? Could have done this better or done that better? And all of these things, that practice of engaging in criticism and self-criticism strengthened us, right? So criticism was not destructive. Criticism is an opportunity.
Come on.
To get it right, to do it better, to learn something and then now incorporate that. That's what criticism can do for us if we take that energy off of it, right? And so one of the things I will always owe to that organization, initiated by Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture, is that we learned how to engage in productive criticism and self-criticism that allowed us to move forward and deal with internal contradictions. And that was an exercise that I've taken into life with me. But as a people, we are very sensitive, and I get it, because of our plight, because of our history, because of our day-to-day existence, right? We tender, we sore. so we don't like to talk about it. But Ella Baker would go on record talking about why King and not her. Okay. And it is because she talks about surrendering her ego. Okay. Now, if you guys want to see that and see, what Ella Baker did and why you don't know her, you can look at Eyes on the Prize. It's still floating around, and you can see her talk. You can even Google or in YouTube get some video of her. You will see her speak, and she has in public ways addressed why she don't want no clapping. She wants to get right to the point. She doesn't, you don't need to know her. You just need to know the work she's doing, and that's what she is seeking to elevate. So this is why, in many ways, Ella Baker remains nameless and faceless in the context of our struggle when she is the very engine behind all the work that you publicly see King do. Okay? And I think for us as Black women in general in spaces like that, there is a understanding that the women historically have stepped aside because they feel like there is a greater fight going on, right? But what we don't seem to understand is that our struggle is very complex, and unity is the struggle. So a lot of what we are facing can be solved by fortifying ourselves and unifying. Those cracks, right? Internal cracks between us and rifts between us, that weakens us. We think that our job is to be fighting this other group of people, when we don't realize that our real struggle is fortifying ourselves. because already in the context of our plight, we were fractured, we were separated. I
Absolutely.
love how Washington talks about all the scattered African people of the world, right? In chapter 2 in my book, he talks about all the scattered. Okay, so us coming back together takes some work, right? And that is what we do when we discuss topics like that. This, do you get what I'm saying? We've got
Absolutely.
to heal those things so that we can
Absolutely.
show up unified. And that hasn't been the case because of our level of sensitivity around the issue, you know. So this is why you know King and not Ella Baker and so many other women who were in the struggle, key figures in the struggle, but you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
going to
yeah,
know them.
yeah. For example, Henrietta Vinton Davis. You
Hmm.
know, no
Hmm.
one talks about her. You know, typically, I mean, Professor James Small, he always talks about her. He said that was my girl, Henrietta Vinton Davis. He said he talked about how she was basically Garvey's right hand woman,
Hmm.
and when he went to prison, she held him down and held the movement down. But you rarely hear people talk about Henrietta Vinton Davis. They
Right,
typically just talk about, Marcus Garvey. Even with Amy, we talked about that. Let's get to that. Right. So
right,
you don't hear about these women.
right,
You hear about Henrietta Vinton Davis. You don't know that she was Garvey's right hand woman. We don't know her, but we'll say Marcus Garvey, the RBG, the red, black, and green. But no one ever mentions Henrietta
right,
Vinton Davis, right?
right.
And then you mentioned his Marcus, the Honorable Marcus Garvey's wife,
Amy Garvey. Both of his wives were called Amy.
Amy.
Were Amy
Yeah, but
Garvey.
right, but you wanted to bring her up as well, right?
So she writes on. She wrote an essay called "On African Rights and Liberty." I believe I might be wrong. Don't quote me because I actually uh, I use it for a course, and I don't want to switch screens and go to it. But she writes an essay about the struggle of women in the context of the Garvey movement, right? And how the women are the worker bees. Okay. And let me just be very clear. The fact that she discusses that is not, oh, she talks about her essay is called The Role of Women. Uh Something to that effect. I'll actually Google it before we get off. But she is very vocal about the fact that this is not for the purpose of getting accolades, but this
Mhm.
is about the treatment of women in this space, in these spaces. You get what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
it's not as simple as, hey, I want to be seen along with you, because it's not actually that. These women are not really interested in that, and great for the men who are in the leadership positions because they're not buying. This is very much unlike the struggle you see go on between white men and white men and white women. I'm just going to be very real. What you see between white men and white women is a struggle and a battle for power in a hegemonic society. What you see with regard to African women and Black women in within the ranks of our struggle is a desire to be treated with human respect
That's
and
right.
dignity.
Absolutely.
It's very
Absolutely.
different struggle. Okay, because regardless of where Black women are, African women are, we've got to bring the power back home to our communities. And that's something that, so we don't get to run off into the sunset with the power, right? All the power seized. What is Ella Baker talking about? We who believe in freedom can't rest. And what does she start? When the lives of sons who belong to Black mother is seen as equal to
That's
the
right.
lives of white mother's sons, right? So we who believe in, what is she advocating for? The lives of not just our children, but our sons in particular. So there's not this vying for power. This is like, we need, you know, uh, not simply equality, but we need a level of human dignity,
Come on.
respect, to be on the ground amongst the rank and file of the masses of women who undergird and sustain these movements.
Absolutely.
Period. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think what people get caught up with in terms of the backdrop of white supremacy and culture and European culture and race and racism, what they get caught up with the optics of that and don't really get to the core of our issue in our struggle. The what is problematic about white supremacy and culture is that out of the European cultural context, right? So those folks that would come here in mass as settlers and pursuers of conquest would come out of a cultural context that was fundamentally anti-human.
Come on. That's a
Okay?
fact.
They produced a culture that is fundamentally anti-human. That's the problem with it. It was anti-human for them, and they would bring it out into the world. Okay. And so when we start talking about what is at the core of our struggle, human dignity is always right there, because when you have cultural expressions that negate one's humanity, okay, then that's always going to be the pushback. Human dignity, right? Human dignity, not necessarily vying for power.
Mhm.
Right. And so that's what you see with regard to the ranks internally. But Ella Baker said it best. She surrendered her ego. So you
Mm.
need not know her. Okay. Just know her struggle, right? For her community, for her people, for her own children. That's what she's talking about. But let me just, I want to, two things, give people some context. So if you wanted to know about Maya Angelou's position and her intimate relationship, okay, so it's overexposed. I'm trying to get a position for you so you can see.
Yeah, hold it still, Doc. Yeah, once you hold it still, we can see it.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Can you see the title?
I can. I need glasses, but they may be
Okay.
able
It's
to.
called So A Song Flung Up to Heaven.
Okay.
Okay. And I at first I was thinking you had to get deep in the book to get the context and everything like that. Nah, she jumps right into it from the start of the book. She's telling you that she's, about to get on the plane back to the United States, and she shares a letter from Malcolm X. Okay. And what Malcolm was saying to her, and about what Malcolm, they had a very close relationship. Okay, and he's talking about he says, he writes, "Dear Maya, I was shocked and surprised when your letter arrived, but I was also pleased because I only had to wait 2 months for this one, whereas previously I had to wait almost a year. You see, I haven't lost my way." They have an endearing relationship.
It seems like it.
Okay?
That's why I was smiling. It seems
Yeah,
like they did.
and he
Absolutely.
signs the letter, "Your brother Malcolm."
That's what I'm talking about.
She is on her way to work with him, and they had been in Ghana together. When I thought of Robert Sobukwe, they've been working with the Pan African Congress, right? The Sobukwe's in South Africa. So they're engaging Africa together. Now, what's notable about the fact that she's talking about this is that Maya Angelou writes her autobiography in several books, right? And this is obviously one of the installments where she shares her activism and who she's coalescing with. And many people know that she was in Ghana and that she lived in Ghana and her son was there. If you know her personal story, she was there a little longer than planned. But notably, she had tried to work with Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King was like, no. I would not be working with any woman.
Mm. He said visibly. He said visibly. So behind the scenes, it was okay.
Yeah, behind the scenes is okay, but
yeah,
he was
but
not going
visibly,
to work, he was not going to work with any woman in visible leadership. No, right? And it would have been interesting to understand why. What were his real personal motives? We can speculate about it, but we don't know. Now, he's not saying, "I don't want you women folks to do all the work that allows me to be the face of the movement." He don't reject the work. He doesn't reject the work ethic.
No.
Okay.
But he comes from that, with the Christian background is very patriarchal. A woman should be seen and not heard. They always quote, I believe it was a letter to Timothy, where Timothy was Paul. I think either Paul was writing Timothy or Timothy was writing Paul. So there was a letter, and I want to say it was either Paul or Timothy, but they said, I suffer a woman not to teach, but to learn in silence.
Mm,
There were a lot of pastors, even contemporary pastors, who said, I don't share my pulpit, with a woman, right? I suffer a woman,
right.
a woman's, her job is to not teach, but to learn in silence. They even in the Bible also tell you, go ask your husband, right? Sit in church, be quiet. You got any questions? Go ask your husband, and so Dr. King subscribed to Christianity, which is extremely, European patriarchy, you know what I mean,
Right.
or European or Eurocentric patriarchal. I don't know if you want to say both together, but that's what it is, and that's what he subscribed to. So when I'm hearing you say he didn't want to work with a woman in leadership, visibly, I can
You're
see
not
that.
surprised.
Yeah, I'm
You're
not
not
surprised.
surprised.
I'm
Well,
not
let me say
surprised.
something about the Christian piece. So, true Christianity is African, and what King and others, and listen, I don't mind the comments or the response to
Oh
this,
yeah, come on. I know what you're
but
saying. I know where you're going to go
what
with it.
what King and others were in the practice of is Christendom,
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
capitalistic empire or expansion of religious ideology called Christianity.
Come on, come
Okay.
on.
And true Christianity, we talking about the Black Madonna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we right. So um the the fact of the matter is that yes, a very Western
Absolutely.
uh uh, European patriarchal version of Christianity is what King was involved in, right? And of course, of the Protestant sort of denomination. Um, so yes, the women are historically erased, right? The Holy Trinity
Oh
was
yeah,
really not the
it's
Holy
just right.
Trinity,
Yeah, it's
right?
just
The Holy
God.
Trinity,
Yeah, it's just God, the Jesus, and the Holy Spirit.
right?
The woman is out of there.
Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. The woman is totally erased. And we know where does that come from, right? Asar, Set, Haru, and then on and on and on, which gives you the blueprint for what ends up being a modern Christianity. So yes, us engaging in religious, cultural expressions that don't necessarily lead back to us, or the distortion of culture and religious ideology that doesn't necessarily lead back to us is distorted, right? And so you have this view, but we can't afford that. That's just the point. We can't afford it. Our play in our community, historically, the women have always been full participants. Period. If you go back to the continent of Africa, when you look at our struggles, everybody ran out to see the woman king. Are you serious? You think that that's the only context where African women are in full roles of leadership and struggle and all of that? No, that's our history. So for us to be here and to be engaged in struggle and the women marginalized is very interesting. It makes for a very interesting story. But that being said, Cone talks about the fact that Malcolm, who is a practitioner of Islam at that time, right? And he's not in the nation when he's engaging Maya Angelou. This is him moving out of the nation.
Mm.
Even though typically people might think that Islam is more gender biased or has very fixed role, Malcolm was totally open to
Absolutely.
working with Maya Angelou and had a lot less of those biases. But he also, outside of Manning Marable's account, he had a lot less contradictions than many others, okay, to be exploited. So he is willing, and you see the relationship and engagement. Now, this is the transformation that King interestingly goes to. In this same account of Maya Angelou's book, she shares later on that she attempts to work with King, and not because she pushes the issue. He now has come to a point where he realizes that he is willing to work with her, right? And that trajectory is very interesting because it mirrors the other transformation that King has made. King goes from thinking that the issue in the United States with regard to our struggle here is all based around social and civil rights, and comes to recognize that in a capitalist society where our history has been the human commodity, right? We were the human commodities bought and sold in a capitalist society. He understands that the issue is bigger than the civil rights.
Come on.
The issue is economic. The issue is capitalism. And what does he do? When he's assassinated, he has hundreds and probably close to thousands of people in a tent city on the US, Capitol, because he has waged the poor people's movement.
Yeah.
And their attitude is like, hey, we want you to stay in your lane talking about the buses and
right
about the water fountains.
Don't come for my money. Don't come for my money.
Attack capitalism.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And that was his I don't want to say it was a mistake, but that was, I think that was the root cause of his assassination. Like you said, as long as he was saying, as long as we want to, I want to use your bathrooms, I want to, live beside you, I want to work beside you. As long as he was dealing with that, they were fine.
Right.
But when he started calling for a massive redistribution of wealth and power, they said, get him out of here. And then he was assassinated on April the 4th, 1968.
And when he started criticizing their role in the world, because what was he criticizing? He was criticizing the Vietnam War, right? He was criticizing the U.S. Really expansion of their empire, so to speak. We know today one of the biggest businesses in the United States is war.
Oh yeah.
As they close down industry, they have initiated war, and so this is the precursor to that. But he understands that war is profitable for the United States. It's not unprofitable. There's no reason they would engage in if it wasn't profitable. This is a capitalist society now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They don't do anything without the impetus being some capital gain. So, that being said, he's undergone a transformation in terms of his politics publicly, but he's also undergone a transformation in terms of his personal politics. And that would be great. I would have loved to know what was the
impetus
change and the impetus for the transformation, going from saying, I'm not going to tolerate any woman visibly in my big six, in my leadership, in a struggle where the women are in the masses.
Yeah.
And you got one woman in particular right behind you. Okay.
Absolutely.
You on her shoulders every step of the way. That's hands down a fact. Anybody who wants to go research it, that's a fact. King is standing on Ella Baker's shoulders. That being said, something happens for him. And because we don't know, we can't give instruction, because this is still a plight we have.
Absolutely.
Right? We still go through negation of women in our community, and it ends up being exploited by people on the other side of our struggle.
Come on. Right? They exploit. Like you said, they know, they recognize it. Yeah, they see it. Right. They see it. And like you said, they exploit it.
And we don't get it that to resolve these contradictions strengthens us. Absolutely. Why do you have to, we shouldn't have to argue for you that, they have these contradictions, but they were doing good work for Black people. Stop. Resolve the contradiction.
Come on.
Okay. Because if the work you're doing for us is important, then it needs to be important to you too. Right? Period.
And Dr.
Look, you get caught doing X, Y, and Z, right? And look at Malcolm. We know all the FBI files are open now.
Absolutely
didn't have the same kind of contradictions.
No, he didn't.
Malcolm had already undergone, and I would argue Malcolm did undergo a transformation. And Malcolm,
he absolutely did.
He's a story of return. See, Malcolm is a little bit different. Meaning this. Malcolm comes out of a staunch Garvey household where there was order and there was a respect. Okay, so what he would encounter in the nation is nothing. I mean, and this is not even my own opinion. You hear this echoed by his brother Wilford and his sister, one of his sisters, that like coming out of a Garveyite household that was destroyed by the system, and then encountering the nation and Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
Yes.
that was a return.
That was a return back
That
to
was a
from whence he
return.
came.
A
Ashe.
return from
Ashe.
that which he came. So
Ashe.
Malcolm had some. Listen, today, can we get some brothers and sisters to be on the same page? Can we get a mother and father to both be into progressive movement and activism for Black people? Well, listen, it's hard for us to find that now, but Malcolm had two parents.
Come on.
Who were in the Garvey movement. His father recruited and was a minister and recruited for the Garvey movement, the UNIA, and his mother was a writer and journalist for the UNIA. And how do they meet? They meet in the context of the UNIA.
Absolutely.
Okay? So he's not flailing. Malcolm, he gets lost because their reality gets eclipsed. They are attacked. The father is murdered. The mother is bombarded, right, by the system and their agents, social workers and the like. How are you going to take care of all these children? You don't have the economics, this, that, and other. And then our children are parceled out. And then he undergoes, he's flailing.
He was in the streets. He went in the streets. But the book, I'm telling you, that book, the autobiography of Malcolm X, is fire. But Doc, I want to move to the speaking of women, because you talked about how, if you look at the, a lot of the Black organizations and even our Black, male leaders,
right,
their organizations, right? Their organizations, all of those things were sort of like undergirded by Black women, right? And so, like, I want to talk about the Black Panther Party, because typically when we look at the Black Panther Party, right? People say, Bobby Seale, Huey P., they founded the Black Panther Party. But I read, that the average age of the Black Panther Party was 19, and they said over half of them. So these were young people. I don't think that when we talk about the Black Panther Party, we understand how young these people were. The average age of a Black Panther Party member was 19, and half of them were women. But we don't, you don't, you hear about Angela Davis, you may hear about Asada Shakur or Catherine Cleavage. But other than that, you don't really hear about a lot of women in the Black Panther Party. You typically hear, about Bunchy Carter, Chairman Fred Hampton, Senior. You hear about Huey. You hear about Bobby. You hear about the young brother who was killed at the age of 16. I think his name was Bobby Sutton. Yeah, Bobby Hutton. And so you hear about all of the men. So you would think that the Black Panther Party was largely I guess operated by men. I think that's the perception that people have, but it was largely an operation that was really ran by women. So, and not only that, but women faced a lot of sexism during that particular, during that within the party. But that's never discussed. We talk about the 10-point program, which was great. The 10-point program. We talked about the brothers, patrolling the neighborhood. We talk about the shootouts that was happening with the government. But while we're fighting them, and I'm saying we, Black man and Black woman, we're fighting our external enemies, right?
Right.
There was internal stuff happening, and that's still happening, in our community. So, Black women during that time, we weren't only just fighting with white men, we were also going at our men, with the sexism that occurred. So what are your thoughts on the Black Panther Party as an organization, as with the women face? What are your thoughts about that?
So very interesting, because I come from a political organization too, where the founder was for a time a member of the Black Panther Party, right? And that is Stokely Carmichael, that is Kwame Ture, right? He for a hot minute he is in the Black Panther Party, and he is also notably a major proponent in the civil rights movement, right? Registering people to vote on the front lines with King down in the bowels of the American South, going door to door, registering people to vote. So Interestingly enough, I think my position is I understand politically that in organizations like that, there's always like an orientation process, in spite of the fact that, the Black Panther Party, interestingly enough, was just like, hey, you want to be, sign up and you come in and here's your work, go sell the paper, go do this, go do that. And it was a 10-point program. That being said, I don't know that there was intensive political education within the organization to really adequately teach people about what it means, what oppression means, how is it expressed, okay, and the things that we have to struggle with internally in order to show up unified, in order to have a unified front, in order to collectively struggle against some larger issues. I don't think that they were probably in it. And notably, what you said, very young people,
Yeah,
very young people who did not already have the tools, right? What is early adulthood about? It's like you're acquiring the tools. That's why you come out of your parents' home. They give you tools, and then this is the first time you're using them. And so these are young people who have not had a chance to use their tools. But what they notably understand is that they're opposed to oppression and they want to contribute in some significant way. And so I think that what was lacking in the Black Panther Party, and it's funny you're asking me this question and we even having this discussion, because when I was an undergraduate at Tuskegee, I did an independent study on the Black Panther Party, and my job was to read 2,000 pages on the Black Panther Party. And I come to understand some things that I didn't understand, and I had no clue at that time that later on I would know some of the very people I would read about, okay?
Wow.
On both ends, right? In terms of the council that existed, that us was a part of, that the Panthers were a part of. Even recently, I've met some other individuals, women in the Black Panther Party as well. But this is the first time that I would encounter the story of people like Elaine Brown.
Yeah, they talked about it in the chat.
Right?
Yeah, they talked about it in the chat.
Right. She wrote a book called A Taste of Power. Now, some people have said, okay, she was an agent, she was
FBI informant,
operative. Well, let me just say this: it's common, and this is coming from people that I know who are living Panthers, former Black Panthers. The accusation that someone is an agent is just as common as for someone to be in the Black Panther Party, right? So, in other words, let me say it another way: that is a common accusation across the Black Panther Party, right? And yes, the Black Panther Party, like all of our organizations, were heavily infiltrated. However, that does not mean she was not sexually assaulted.
Oh yeah, regardless of whether she was
was not raped. That does not mean she did not survive the abuse that she did. And whether we like her or not, notably, she was the only woman to serve as the head of the Black Panther Party, right? She took Huey Newton's position when he was in prison, okay? And so most people don't know that about her, and it escapes me what his title was or whatever the case may be, but she served in his position.
Okay.
And so this is why you see her and Bobby Seale later on run for political office, the two of them. She was the chairman. So it didn't, I got it. She served as chairman of the Black, or chairwoman of the Black Panther Party. Okay. And then later on, Bobby Seale and her run for political office. Now, some people would say that they move right, while the other factions of the Black Panther Party, who were not without the same accusation, right? So here you have on this side, Elaine Brown being assaulted, sexually assaulted by members of the Black Panther Party, and later on she even says by Huey Newton himself. But then on the other wing, the more leftist wing, right, where you have them go out into the world and establish a chapter of the Black Panther Party in Algeria, that is who? Infamously Eldridge Cleaver, Kathleen Cleaver. I'm not saying she's infamous, but I'm saying Eldridge Cleaver definitely was infamous. He is part of the international chapter, right, section of the Black Panther Party in Algeria. But our notably and beloved Sekou Odinga is also there, a more principled figure who is still around, and recently in the last 5 years was released from prison. And that being said, we know that Eldridge Cleaver had some serious issues, right? We know with women, Soul on Ice, where he talks about his desire and love for white women, okay? When he talk and what they symbolize to him, okay? Serious contradictions.
That's what I mean. That's what we're talking about, family, tonight. Internal contradictions. Come on, come on, talk about it.
In kind, there's no shortage of people who basically said that Eldridge Cleaver was an agent, right? That Eldridge Cleaver was responsible for the death of Bobby Hutton. So there's no shortage on either side. The accusation, are the historical facts or the historical records still true? Meaning that, did Elaine Brown still get assaulted like many other women in the Black Panther Party? Probably so. I believe it. Right? I mean, you get what I'm saying? These
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Things, right? And it doesn't negate, because let's be very careful. She is a Black woman who got assaulted. Do you think anyone went to prison for that?
No.
So right. So let's not pretend like she, took someone down with the accusation. That did not happen, because the value of Black women in and out of the movement is questionable then and now. Okay. And so we are seeing in the contemporary sense, all these women with the whole, surviving R. Kelly and this, that, and the other. People are up in arms even now. Recently, the part 3 came out, and now you're getting court transcripts, and the women are sharing what they went through in terms of the court. Why are you mad at these women for surviving what I understand to be horrific episodes of violence and sexual assault?
I want to pause right here, Dr. Wright. I really want to shout out Brother Kuji Chagalia. This brother, I love this brother, man. When I say he's just he studies, this brother studies, and he's unapologetic about the truth, about telling the truth. So he put right here, he said Cleveland said he raped Black women as practice to rape Euro females. So this is a brother that's going to tell you the truth. You know what I mean? He's like one of those type of people,
right?
When I think of
type of brother,
yeah, he's a Malcolm type of brother. He's like, hey, I'm gonna let you know what it is. These are the facts, whether you like them or not. And then I did see somebody who was in the audience. They were a little sensitive. Y'all disrespecting Dr. King. No, we just said that he made the statement that he didn't. We said that he didn't visibly want to work with females in leadership, visibly. And I don't think that's disrespect when you're repeating what someone actually said. You know what I mean? Like, you're actually dealing with what they said. And so again, I understand that we're sensitive. Again, I'm just going to say this disclaimer one more time. This conversation is not about disrespecting any of our great leaders, any of our great organizations, any of our great Black organizations, our great Black leaders. It's about addressing, right, the internal contradictions of the Black liberation movement. We're still in that movement, family. I know a lot of you all think that it ended, in 75, right? We're actually still in that movement. We've been in that movement since the ancestors first stepped foot, on this continent, since they first stepped foot, anywhere in Europe, in the UK, in the Western Hemisphere. So family, this is about addressing the internal, contradictions that lie within the Black liberation movement, so that we can unify and advance. That's what this is about. We can't keep acting like none of this stuff doesn't exist. We can't. It does exist. It happened to me in the so-called conscious community. That's why I don't deal with a lot of those fools anymore. It happened. It happened. I had to go to court. Like, it happened. I was being harassed. I received death threats. Right? People lied on me. They slandered me. They did all kinds of stuff. And this wasn't white folks. These
Okay.
were people who looked like me, family. This
Right.
wasn't white people. These were so-called conscious brothers, so-called African-centered brothers. Come on, man. So
Right.
this isn't about bashing. We got to deal with this crap in our communities so that we can clean house, unify, clean house, and heal and move on. That's
Right.
what this conversation is about. But we can't move forward in a robust way until we address the enemies who lie within.
That's right. That's
All
right.
right. All right.
Absolutely.
And so I
Thank
want to
you.
I want to
Thank you.
close on no problem, Doc. I just want to close on this last note.
Mhm.
Or you finish your thought? I'm sorry, because I kind of chimed in, but what did you finish your thought, Doc?
Uh, I believe I did. Just the simple understanding that there was a lot of that behavior in the Black Panther Party, right? And to imply that, all of it was a lie and part of COINTELPRO, that's not exactly accurate.
No, it's
Okay.
not.
And so what allows a COINTELPRO to exploit us are those internal contradictions. Okay.
Come on, that's a
Are,
fact.
are, are the assaults, are the rapes that take place within the ranks. Okay. And for people to have obvious contradictions that, the power structure can highlight, can exploit, can use against one another. We know this. We know this even with King, right? So his personal issues with women were again and again exploited by the
The facts.
FBI.
It was. They
Right,
they they talk
absolutely.
they put it out
Whereas
there.
Malcolm is the stark contrast. And if any of you have looked at the open files, all right, even with the redacted information on Malcolm, you see there's no similar accounts. Okay, so they got to come another way. What did they do? They deal with they plant seeds within an organization that he has. They exploit the relationship between him and Elijah Muhammad. But what is Elijah Muhammad's great contradiction? I know folks, they want to whatever. I had a chance to sit down with Brother Razak, who was Malcolm's assistant in the last year of his life. Malcolm would speak about these very issues, and it's a shame that we're still dealing with some of the same issues.
It
Do
is a
you
shame. And
understand?
and that's why discussions like this are
Mhm.
extremely important to raise awareness so that we
Right.
can begin to do some self-examination. So let me give you a quick example. Let me give you a quick example, Doc. And then I'll move on to my last point because I want to close out within the next
Okay.
15 minutes. But
All right.
but let me give you this point. So I used to in my teens, in my family who my family who's watching could
Mhm.
attest to this. In my teens and probably in my 20s, um, oh my goodness, I definitely operated with Miss Andrew, a victim of being, sexually violated,
Mhm.
had daddy issues, and
Mhm.
so I didn't realize it. I didn't call it Miss Andrew,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
But I was dealing with those issues and figuring out in my 30s what it really was. I didn't
Mhm.
trust men, any male that came around me. I didn't trust them. I didn't, you get what I'm saying? I was very protective of myself and
Right.
the women in my family. You get what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Based on,
Mhm.
my bad experiences with men,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it wasn't until in my early 30s that I
Mhm.
started doing some introspection and I started
Mhm.
healing, from things that happened in my life. I reached out to my father. We
Mhm.
began healing our relationship.
Mhm.
I began healing from being, sexually violated at the age of 8. I began healing from all of that stuff. And
Mhm.
when I healed from a lot of that stuff,
Mhm.
I began to open up my heart to men again. I always tell my uncle, if he's watching, he would laugh. I tell him that I said I started falling in love with men again when he
Mhm.
came into my life.
Right.
Just him loving on me the way he loved on me, and just you get what I'm saying, and the way he treated my aunt. And so,
Right.
but
Right.
but I wasn't able to change. The point that I'm trying to make, Dr. Wright, is that
Mhm.
I wasn't able to change until I looked within and figured out, but I looked within and figured out what was going on with me. And
Right.
once I figured that out, I began my healing my
Right.
healing process. And
Right.
now I have beautiful relationships, with men,
Right.
beautiful relationships. But I
Right.
couldn't have gotten to that point if
Until
I did not do some introspection and figure out, why did I have a disdain for this man? He didn't do anything for me. Where did this disdain come from, this guy that I don't even know? Well, it came because I had daddy issues. It came because I was violated. So until we deal with our issues,
internal
family,
stuff. Right.
internal stuff, we cannot transform. So it wasn't until I was 32, give thanks, that I began my transformation. And I give thanks. I give thanks. I did a lot of meditating, a lot of crying, a lot of praying. But I'm proud of the woman I am today. But I couldn't reach that. I couldn't reach that place until I dealt with what was going on with me internally. So, family, that is what this conversation, this discussion is about.
Absolutely.
Dr. Wright, what was the name of the book about, Maya Angelou that you held up? What was the title
Well,
again?
A Song Flung Up to Heaven. A Song Flung Up to Heaven. And it is, Maya Angelou. Let me see if I stop it. The Song Flung Up to Heaven. And interesting, what you're saying is so true, because what's Maya Angelou's story? Very similar.
Yeah,
okay? Their eyes are watching God. I mean, not their eyes. What is it?
I know why Cage Bird sings.
Cage Bird sings. Right?
When I read that book, I was in tears. Go Doc. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, when I read it, I was in tears. It was a friend of the family's. Now she came from that old school family. She kind of implied some things. She's like, they dealt with him. She never saw him again. He came up missing, but she was violated by, a guy, in her family. Now, I love what Brother Rob said. Brother Rob, the djembe poet, he said there was a sister who was once in the movement, talk about sexism going on. He said, I believe, she tried to bring it to the mainstream and she was shamed for it. So that's why a lot of women don't speak out. Because if they speak out and they begin, now you're a feminist. Oh, you hate men. Oh, it's so many excuses to just dismiss, when we tell our story.
Right.
When we tell our story. And so the woman was shamed. She couldn't even tell a daggone story. But anyway, Dr. Wright, I did want to mention. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I did want to also mention that the women in Steve Biko's organization, shout out to the South African Students Organization, the SASO. They also talked about racism in there. So this wasn't just, over here. This is right on the continent in South Africa. Those sisters said, yeah, we experienced some sexism, but we put it on the back burner, because it was about the movement, but they were dealing with it on the continent as well. Okay, so I wanted to say that, Doc, and then I wanted to close out with the situation with Fannie Lou Hamer. When Fannie Lou Hamer, remember when she was arrested, when she was arrested, I believe it happened in like 63 or 64, when she was arrested and jailed, you had the white male officers get two black guys, I don't even want to call them men, to beat this woman. Doc, you're familiar with that story, right?
Not completely, but I've heard something about it. But
okay, let me. I just pulled something up. Let me
please.
read it really quickly. Right? Let me share it. Hold on. I'm gonna share my screen because I don't know the ins and outs, but I know she was jailed, and then she was beaten. She, the white officers had two black dudes beat her. So look at this. It says right here. Fannie Lou Hamer arrested and beaten in Winona, Mississippi. On June the 9th, 1963, Fannie Lou Hamer and other civil rights activists were arrested in Winona, Mississippi, while returning from a voter education workshop in South Carolina. Miss Hamer and the other activists had been traveling in the white section of a Greyhound bus despite the threats from the driver that he planned to notify local police at the next stop. When the bus arrived at the Winona bus depot, some of the activists attempted to eat at Stanley's Cafe, but were refused service. Miss Hamer, who stayed on the bus, soon saw police officers arresting some of the activists. She got off the bus and was seized by a white police officer who began kicking her and arrested her. In August 1964, while testifying at the Democratic National Convention to urge party bosses to seat a group of Black Mississippi voters as delegates, Mrs. Hamer recalled the abuse she endured the night at the county jail. These are her words, family, not ours. She says, it wasn't too long before 3 white men came to my cell. She said, one of these men was a state highway patrolman, and he asked me where I'm from. I told him Rouville, and he said, we're going to check this. They left my cell, and it wasn't long before they came back. He said, you are from Rouville, all right. And he used a curse word, probably called her out of her name. It says that he said, we are going to make you wish you were dead. It says the white officers then forced 2 African-American prisoners, these were males, they brutally beat Mrs. Hamer with loaded blackjacks. She was nearly killed. As Mrs. Hamer regained consciousness, she overheard one of the white officers propose, we could put those sons of bees, the big black river, and nobody would ever find them. So it says that Miss Hamer never fully recovered from the attack. She lost vision in one of her eyes and suffered permanent kidney damage. She died in 1977 at the age of 59. And it goes into lawyers with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee filed suit against Winona police who brutalized the activists, but an all-white jury acquitted them, of course. Despite the trauma she experienced, Ms. Hamer returned to Mississippi to continue organizing and remained active in civil rights causes until her death. You might say, Dr. Maat, why are you bringing this up? She was beat by 2 so-called brothers. It says 2 African. They were Black men in the jail. They beat her. They beat her until she almost died. I mean, damn. I mean, what happened to the brothers that's like, hell no, do that shit yourself. Right. I just take the ass. You get them like, do that yourself, bro.
Right.
Like, what happened to that man? Like, do that. I'm not going to beat this woman. I'm not going to beat this sister.
Right.
They went ahead and beat her. The white man said beat her, they beat her. Sure. The white man said beat her, and they beat her. That's what happened.
Right. And we're not supposed to talk about it, but that's the thing about it too. So I hear and I'm aware of sisters younger than me who are dealing with the same thing. And I have had conversations with my elders where I shared some of the things that we go through, right? In certain spaces. And I'm talking about people who have engaged in activism, organization, all of that, okay? Or and what one sister elder who is still an activist said to me, she apologized to me. Okay, she apologized to me because she said this is the same exact stuff she was dealing with 40 years ago.
Wow.
And they just took the high road, are her exact words. But when, I'm going to repeat what I've said to you privately. Okay. When we have another culture's pathology
come on
into our space, okay? Because see, we're also sensitive about this word pathology. Oh, don't call Black men pathology. Don't say pathology, Black men. Listen, we're not talking about Black men's pathology. We're talking about a very different culture's pathology that has resided in our community and has come into our space, and we are not doing the kind of house cleaning that says we don't echo other people's values.
Come on.
So we carry it out. You understand, right? So what I said to Dr. Maat off air is that Kwame Ture talks about the role of the conscious and the unconscious, right? So the role of the conscious is to make the unconscious, is not to make the unconscious conscious, right? Hey, be like me. No. The role of the conscious is to make the unconscious conscious of their unconscious behavior. Now you can say what you want about Kwame Ture because I saw the comments in there. Oh, so and so said KT was the agent. They all called each other agents. If you want to know the truth, at the end of the day, right? Like that was being, it was psychological warfare on the Panthers, on us, on all of those people and those organizations. So let's be very clear. There's nobody who's ever been a Panther or a member of us who has not been accused of being an agent to some extent because all our movements have been infiltrated.
Come on.
Let's be clear about that. However, what we're looking for is the truth and the understanding in an example or an analysis of that, like that, right? So when we are engaging in a certain way, we have to ask ourselves why. Does this come from our culture?
Come on.
Does this serve? Right? Whose ends does this serve? Okay. And we have to make an analysis of that. And we have to address that behavior because a great deal of what we engage in as a people who have been marginalized and systematically oppressed, most of the time we are engaging in behavior that goes against our own self-interest.
That's a fact.
Individually and collectively. I beat her, you know what? I let her have it. But guess what? They're building prisons for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you let that, you know what, have it in your own community, right? And you ended up in jail.
Come on.
Because they started building them for you since you was 8. And they had all the projections for you, right? So
Absolutely.
you end up exactly where they plan. You didn't have a plan for yourself. This, female just got in your way, right? How does this ultimately serve your best interest, our community's best interest, that woman's best interest? Ultimately, it doesn't do any of that. You in jail, you working for free, you're all these things. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So we have to take the behavior we already engage in and say, who does it serve? That's how, listen, and then returned it to sender, right?
Come on, return it to sender. Give it back.
Right.
Give it back.
To them. But we can't have these conversations. Listen, for me, this is going to be an interesting year because as far as I'm concerned, I'm turning my attention to and it's my attention has been on the international work that I do, and it will continue. But I've started making sure that in the international work that I do, that I'm going to speak on the role of women.
Come on.
Okay? Because unlike any other group of people in the history of the world, our women have always been in lockstep with our struggle.
Come on. Yes, we have.
Whether that's on the continent of Africa, whether that's once we cross the ocean and get dispersed, that is a fact. We don't have to adhere or get in line with the way the rest of the world's women move. Okay, we are the progenitors of what you understand as woman leadership in the world on the continent and here. So this idea that we're not going to address these issues, no, they have to be addressed because what needs to happen for us here and everywhere we are, our communities need to be the safest place.
Absolutely.
For Black women, for Black children, and Black men. Okay? Not the most dangerous places, and we're moving towards a space where it's everything but that, right?
Absolutely.
Because we have people carrying out other people's culture in our community, and we're not sophisticated enough to make the critique.
Come on. And Doc, that's what I was like, bam. Like when you said that, I was like, bam. We literally have been infected with another group's culture, and that culture, as you said earlier, is anti-human. And we've been infected fundamentally, and we've been infected with their culture. We've been infected with their culture, which is what I call anti-Maatian, but somebody might say Isfet, right? It's a culture of Isfet, chaos and confusion. Right. It's times when I'm telling you, I've had conversations with my mother and my aunties, and I said, I'm just tired of experiencing the European cultural reality because it's insane. And we see the insanity in this culture. Just cut on the TV, turn on the internet. We literally are absorbed in the European cultural reality, which is insane. It's insanity. We're
Right.
engulfed in insanity, family, and we
Right.
have to rid ourselves of that. So, Doc, I want to plug your book one more time. Family, make
Okay.
sure that you grab her book. Okay, Booker T. Washington in Africa, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. As a matter of fact, like let me type it in the chat.
You,
Yeah,
Doctor.
so do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
So we did this really quick, right? Like we didn't do a whole bunch of planning. So there is a couple of things that I want to say that has nothing to do with my book.
Okay.
So you want to understand, just understand um, some of what we're dealing with. There's some reading, right, that we should do, right? I always share a little bit so you guys know about Maya Angelou. Um, but Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. I always talk about this in particular because this is a woman who survived the institution of slavery, Harriet Jacobs, and she talks about how she couldn't even go to her mother's grave
Mm,
with her enslaver's shadow not falling on her. He had
mm,
respect for nothing. So you talk about being enslaved and also being enslaved by a sexual predator.
mm,
She said she would have given anything to be in the field. What we need to understand about what's going on in our community, where we don't want to talk about like the predatory behavior, when our women experience this and cannot say no to a man and cannot address the issue in the community, you drag us back into enslavement.
mm-hmm.
Do you understand the
Absolutely.
condition? You recreate that, okay, where we can't say no to you, but at the same time we are charged with protecting you as you act out other people's pathology in our community. So I think folks should educate themselves, read Incidents of Life of Slave Girls, going to give you a perspective of the slave experience that you haven't heard before, right? That to be in the house with her oppressors was the worst thing. She would have loved to be in the field. Okay.
Mm,
But then the other thing is too, all right, so I might just leave it there, but listen, you need to bless you. You need
thank
to
you.
those of you who don't know, women in society, Sekou Touré talks about the role of the man in eradicating and addressing sexism within our community. Okay. All these things fortify us as a group of people to wage the larger struggles. Do you get what I'm saying? And not have our internal differences exploited to the detriment of us all, ultimately. Right. So that's another text that I wanted to just, and some people know or don't know, Ahmed Sekou Touré, okay, who talks extensively about the role of women. Thomas Sankara talks women in struggle. I don't have the book on hand right now, but Women in Struggle, the critical role of African women in the liberation struggles in Africa. Okay. So listen, we need to educate ourselves. I hate hearing this nonsense that anytime we speak on these issues that we're taking cues from feminists.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
people don't know I think we don't know our own history. Okay, meaning that I don't think any African woman who really truly knows their history is taking cues from feminists. If you know the history, you know feminists took their cues from us.
Mm,
First women
mm,
to talk about women's rights and liberty. Okay, the role of women on African womanhood, Anna Julia Cooper and others. So like what is wrong with us? We've got to delve into our own history, fortify ourselves on the matter, and address our internal contradictions because it ultimately leads to our own demise when we don't address the issues. And so I hope this year is going to be a different kind of year. You get what I'm
absolutely.
saying? We're going to be able to address some real issues in our community. We're not going to deflect. So I'm gonna leave it there because Dr. Ma, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
looking for the book you said, Thomas.
which
I'm
one?
Thomas
African
Akari.
women in struggle.
I'm, I'm
I'll send it to you because I had a actually. Hmm, I think there's a picture on my Facebook page because I actually was reading it in route to somewhere too.
Yeah,
Like
I'm looking at right. It's women's liberation
right,
and the African freedom struggle.
exactly,
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
exactly.
That's what I was looking when you start name dropping books. I'm like, all right, I don't got that one. Let me
Yeah,
I like, let me grab that one right there. So let me go back.
and the interesting thing about it is that you have more commentary on the African continent coming out of our liberation struggles that give prescription, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for prescription and instruction, how
Absolutely.
to deal with some issues that have been plaguing us. We're not like any other group of people. The women are the masses in our community, and there's not going to be a struggle that is waged that's done without us.
Come on, Ashe.
Period. Okay? It's never even
Ashe.
happened in our history where we have waged struggle on the continent or here and it was done without the women.
Come on. Come
Not
on. Come
not
on. You
part, that's not part of our culture. You
no.
get what I'm saying?
No.
And that's not
Teach.
right. That's not
Teach.
part of our culture. So if everybody around the world marginalizes their women in the context of struggle, that can't be us. That's not a characteristic of our culture. Period. So we need to have more open dialogue and we have to get into discovering to a large extent what the best of our values have been. And it has
Mm.
this idea, this concept of the hatred of women is not something that begins with us.
Say it one more time, doctor. My
The
earphones will start.
hatred of women, right? Misogyny is not something that originates with African culture. It's
Ashe.
not. It is fundamentally and squarely rooted in European culture. Now, for some of our people who aspire to be a certain way, then that might resonate with you. But those of us who are trying to get back to the best of what it means to be African,
African.
then
Ashe.
you should reject that. Okay?
Absolutely.
There's
Absolutely.
nothing more European than the hatred of women. I'm just going to be very real. And if you could follow the breadcrumbs, it will take you back to Europe. Okay? It will not take you to Africa. Period. And I think that this is something that we forget, right? Because we're quick to say, feminism comes, that's white women. Listen, feminism, that's totally born out of a very specific context. African women, what we are engaging in long before we arrive in the continental US and the shores of the Americas, are you calling that feminism? No, there was no context for feminism. That was not feminism. That was African women fulfilling what they always were in matrilineal and matriarchal societies. Period. You can go all the way back to, we have a long history in rights and leadership. Rights, not the kind of rights that you guys are talking about in the context of the United States. My right is this. No, Black and African women, all the way to the beginning of time, were always the keepers of the values.
The keeper of who?
Always in rights, keepers of the values,
Ashe.
and
Ashe.
always in leadership roles. See, some of y'all don't understand the symbolism that you see. If you go on my Facebook page, I have a picture of the progenitor of Hatshepsut, okay? And she's standing there in a certain position. You don't understand the position she's standing in, but she's telling you who she is. She's the
Mm.
regent to her son. She's already in a leadership role.
Come on.
Okay, so this idea that you have progressive and women, that's not inspired by feminists. Feminists and feminism is a very young concept, and it's a distortion of what African women were already doing. African women who were enslaved were talking about women's rights. What do you think Sojourner Truth was talking about? She's talking about women's rights, but this is a woman who survived the institution of slavery. What does she know about the rights of women? She's that progressive because she's invoking her human rights, period. And the idea that she would be negated as a woman or as an African is unacceptable to her. She's not talking about femininity. She's talking about the very essence of being a woman and still being enslaved and still working as much as a man, carrying as much as a man, doing as much as a man. Not because she wants to negate him, but this is her reality. There has not been a like I told this non-African woman, work didn't liberate my grandmother who lived to 91 and 92 years old and worked until she was 80. She always worked. Do you get what I'm saying? So the history, if you look at us in our natural cultural context, you have the women fully and wholly part of the society. I think, you need to bring Brother Infudishi on so he can talk about the origins of women's role, the origins of leadership in the African community, going all the way back to Kemet and how it is evidenced throughout the continent until you get to West Africa and throughout the continent of Africa. This is nothing new to have, the Ogoji or to have women warriors. This is part of African culture. This idea that it's exposure to Europeans that gives us this notion, that just is an announcement that you don't know who you are.
That's a fact, Doc. And I think that I need to bring you back so we can unpack that. Like we can talk about feminism and Black feminism to give our people, a clear understanding of those ideologies. But Doc, let me drop a bomb for you. Oh, that's my Uhuru. I'm up here talking about let me drop a bomb.
Thank you. And I'm reading.
Yeah. So Doc, I want to thank you from the bottom of your heart, bottom of my heart, I'm sorry, for coming through. I appreciate you. Family, make sure that you get Booker T. Washington in Africa, the making of a Pan-Africanist. Doc, thank you so much for coming on. I'm definitely going to hit you up. You already know.
All right.
Peace. Man, family, she killed it. Oh my goodness. Family, make sure you get her book. You see the website. The URL. I dropped it in the chat and you see it on the screen. Booker T. Washington in Africa.com. Let's sell her out. She only has a few copies. Go to the website right now. Click on the book. You see I have the book right here. So I wouldn't ask you to purchase something that I haven't personally purchased. All right. And so I appreciate everybody that's in the building. I see Sister Juju. She hung with us. I see Brother Jakim. I see my brother Kuji Chagali. I see Sister Danielle is in the building. S.A. Smith is in the building. I see Brother Rob. He hung all the way with us. Who else hung with us? I see Sister Donta McCormick. She hung with us. Peace and love to your queen. Who else hung with us? Baba Gerald Meeks was in the building. Brother Eric Jackson, he said, great discussion. Peace and love to you. Brother Marcus Sharp, I love seeing you in the building, King. Goddess Yemiya. I'm sorry, Goddess Yemiya. I hope I didn't butcher that. But I see that beautiful queen. She's in the building. And so the Maadian family was definitely in the building. I think CJ Young slid through here. And I see Baba right here, Baba Quado. He said, he was chit-chatting in the chat. And so appreciate you, Baba, for sliding through. As always, Bamani Shabazz was in the building. Trying to think who else was in the building, family. There's so many of the Maadian family came through, and I appreciate that for you. I appreciate that, family. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your time. All right, family. And so I got to play this.
Uhuru. Sasa. Uhuru. Sasa. Uhuru. Sasa. Uhuru. Sasa.
That was Uhuru, freedom, sasa. Now, Uhuru, sasa. So freedom, now. So Uhuru, Swahili, freedom, sasa, now. And that was the voice of our great ancestor, Geronimo Pratt. I love when I hear his voice. He go off, Uhuru. He says, sasa. So I want to leave you with that, Uhuru, sasa. And I'm going to go ahead and play my outro. Shout out to Brother Jaylon. Brother Jaylon has a beautiful song called Black Power. This was my intro, and this is also going to be my outro. Peace and love to your family. Have a blacktastic week. I'll probably be live within the next day or so, family, but have a beautiful, beautiful, hold on. Let me do this. Because I sometimes I won't hit the audio button and you all will be yelling at me in the chat. Doc, you didn't hit the share audio. We can't hear anything. So I have it here. I just clicked it. All right. So I'm going to go out with this. Peace and love, family. Goodness. There we go.
The world, Chico.
There we go, family. Peace and love to you.
Where's the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country, and his ambassador, his army? I'm protected by the ancestors. Voodoo runs in my bloodline. Don't tell me nothing about the damn devil. Yeah, cool, got you fearing you. No religion, but I'm spiritual. The man used it as propaganda to divide us all. I'm just giving truth. The earth in fear with the black man. The earth in love with the black man. Even down to fashion. They take the culture, then cash in. What you know about Gary Morgan? What you know about Richard Spikes? Your luxury car wouldn't have a shift. Your intersection wouldn't have a light. All praise to the black woman. See, without her, you wouldn't have a life. Have respect. Find yourself disrespecting her, then we at your neck. You don't want us in America, then return back what we did for her. You would have nothing on this blood soil. You all spoiled. Matter of fact, we was here before you. In history books full of falsehood, you can't educate us. We know you dropped crack in the hood to blow families up, it didn't detonate us. As you can see, it didn't separate us. All it really did was elevate us. You can't kill the original people of the earth. Is you fucking crazy? I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power. I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power. I'm Nat Turner with the smoking gun. Change the comb when the sermon stop. The pastor telling me to keep praying. Life telling me to buy a Glock. The news tells us it's our fault. When we shot down by the cops, we're witnessing a modern day lynching. No ropes when they tie the knot. Look at you trying to buy a watch. Look at them finna buy your block, then put you out. Starbucks on your corner, that's how they push you out. Then raise the price. Grandma lived there for years, every day of life. Now she forced to undersell. The system built for you to stay confined. I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power. I am a god in the flesh. I got the blood of a slave. Look at the black on my skin. A beautiful color of shade. Don't be discouraged to say black is black gorgeous. Black is black flawless. Black is black power.